Hello, I thought I would make a little video about how I made my most recent animation. If you've not seen it, here it is. It's Rayquaza versus Rainbow Dash. Originally, I was going to put some footage here of a sort of speed up version of the footage of me drawing. I'll do it for the next animation I do, but the OBS file's corrupted, so I cannot show you that. But I do still want to talk about the process of what I did, and I mean, there's a lot going on here. So let's just get into it. So as you can see, this is my TV Paint file. I always love using TV Paint for all of my animations, and I started with a animatic, so I will pop that in now for you to watch. As you can see, that's how it started, just really roughing out the movements. I also found it very useful to have the 3D plane to sort of map out how the ground would look, not really caring about the quality of what the drawing looked like, just mapping out the generic movement, and then I figured out the rest later. What I did want to talk about was using reference for your animation. So this was all hand drawn. If you do want to plan out a more complicated movement like I did with this one, especially at these higher 24 frames per second frame rates, as you can see on these top layers here, so that's the color there, and that's the line art. These are all 24 frames per second, which is pretty crazy, but it looks, well, I think it looks pretty smooth, which I'm really happy with. So for this flip here, I used this footage here. I'll play it side by side, so you can sort of see the comparison of the reference footage and the final result that I created, really exaggerating those key poses. So like this, I remember being a key pose, this one here, and then this one with that arm swing. I really wanted to get that right. And that's quite a big jump there in the animatic, but then when I went to do the line art, which was drawing over this one in this layer here, not the color, sorry, you can sort of see that I would start with this keyframe and then that keyframe, and then these two here are the in-betweens that I did, which has got a lot of stretch on them, so the proportions go a bit weird in between these keyframes where I think they're a bit better. And then to show that movement, I really stretch her head in this frame especially. You can see the difference between that frame and the keyframe that's behind it on the animatic there, which I think makes a lot of sense. For the bit later on over here, I actually used footage of a crane taking off. Now, I really just used it because I wanted the wings to open and her to fly away, but instead of running, she flies. But I'll show you that crane footage anyway. Hopefully you can sort of understand my process a bit more just through seeing this here. These were big, long keyframes. So as you can see, this first frame is 6 frames, and then I did 4 frames here in the animatic for each one, super rough. And then when I went on later on to do the line art, which will be one of these layers over here, that's the background. This one here, I'm very chaotic in the way I work, so these are the line arts, and it went from 6 frames to working in 2s, which just means that because this is in 24 FPS, each frame is actually holds for 2 frames at 12 FPS. This sequence plays back at, and this one here is on 3s for just 1 frame. Sort of the next step I would do is I would draw over the main keyframes, which is this one here and this one here, and then figure out the timings that I want in between each one, which here was 12 FPS, but then here I thought I could get away with holding it for 3 frames before moving on to this next one, which is actually just the same image getting smaller very quickly because of the speed that it works at. And then when you contrast those two, I'll tell you what, I'll play you them. You can sort of see the difference there. If I slow this down a little bit for you, you can really see the difference between the speeds in my final line art and the rough animatic behind it there. I hope that sort of helps. And then I added the colour, and finally I added in my background, which has a zoom out at this stage, like so. And when you add all that together, that makes that sequence, which obviously at 12 FPS looks really jarring, but if you speed that back up to 24 FPS, it looks like that, which is that first little sequence. And then to really add some visual interest, I added in the power beam, which is this layer here. So that's the line art, and then I colored that in. And this sequence here, as you can see, is on 1. So all of these, Rayquaza is on 12 FPS, but these bits here are actually on 24, which is how it looks so quick, which is what I wanted. It didn't matter that Rayquaza was slow because your eye is drawn to this here because of the light, and that is moving quickly, which when you play that slower, you can really see that that's moving very quickly. But Rayquaza is on a different FPS, which I then actually utilized that again later on here. So this is another shot that I want to play side by side to. The reference that I used for the shot is actually from How to Train Your Dragon. I really wanted a shot where I could really see the difference in scale between the two characters, and I found this one from How to Train Your Dragon, and it worked really well. So once again, animatic is running on less frames there. That's just the bit where her tail disappears. You can sort of see them fly by, like so. But then when I came to animating over the top of this with my line art, you can see that that is Rayquaza's layer here in the green. Excuse the dog outside if you can hear that. And Rainbow Dash's layer is a bit higher up. If I just move this down so you can compare the two, they're not in time with each other. And I did this on purpose because I knew that these were both, well, some of these are on 1s, but most of them are on 2s. And it would mean that even though they're on 2s, there's movement on each frame. So on a frame where Rayquaza doesn't move, Rainbow Dash does, and vice versa. Because obviously the sequence is a fight, it shows that they are not in sync with each other as well, and there's a sort of competition between the two characters during this part of the sequence. So yeah, there's it slowed down. You can really see how they're not in sync with each other, and it adds a bit of friction to how it works. And then when you play that at full speed, it looks like that. Big old crunch. And then the final part there, lots of particle effects, impact frames, just going into the black and drawing it in white instead to add that impact. But then later on, I think it's around here. Ah, there we go. This is the bit I wanted to talk about. So you can see this sort of light here where I'm drawing. And the way that I did that actually is really simple. You just go into effects up here and stylize, glow, and then you can add a nice glow. So as you can see, it's now added a red glow. And then I would just add that to all of my effects layers. Really simple little trick that's really easy to do in TV Paint. I find it very useful a lot of the time. This is the last little thing I wanted to talk about. Her hair. I had fun animating her hair. So as you can see, the way I did it is I had this big background of just the rainbows. Okay, so here you can see an example of it here. So this is the color layer, and this is the layer for her hair, which I used this background, and then I would go onto the layer with the line art, use the selection magic wand tool, select that, and then delete everything here with the eraser. Delete everything that isn't the rainbow, and then that would mean that with each frame it's like the rainbow is behind her and the pattern moves. Instead of having to draw the rainbow each time, the pattern just changes depending on where she is in the frame, which I think is a very cool effect. It's sort of inspired by, if you've ever seen the show Chowder, their clothing and hats in that. That's what that is inspired from. Here's me adding all my sound effects, which are, if you've not heard of the website Freesound, it is what you think it is. It's just a bunch of loads of free sound effects, and then a couple of these are other ones as well, like this is Rayquaza's sound effect from, I think, Gen 6. And a couple of other bits here, but just to show you, this was my process, throwing in lots of different sound effects at different points until I had something that I liked, and then it was all ready to go. So yeah, I think that's everything for today, so thank you very much for watching if you did. Hope you found this useful. I'll maybe make some more of these in the future. I definitely want to include some speed paints of me actually drawing in the next one. Like I said, once again, sorry that footage didn't work out for you, but I hope you liked this video anyway, and yeah, I'll see you at the next one. Thank you, bye! Change